Hello friends, it's me again, Eli. It's been a while. I've been avoiding typing this out because at first I really didn't want to talk about what happened, but I've now convinced myself that telling all of you might be therapeutic. Sort of convinced myself anyway, I won't lie. I did stop and question my choices about 4 times in writing just these first 2 paragraphs. I think I've made it over the hump now though. Too late to go back. I'm just gonna fucking write it, and then I can share it if I feel like it. Right? Right. Well, let me lay it out on the table then. Between my last post and this one, I almost died. Like, more than usual. I mean, I was bleeding and fading in and out of consciousness for several days. Maybe a week. I don't really remember, to be honest, it's all kind of a haze. I definitely hallucinated. I remember visions of my family dancing with some Brents and a Pineapple King. 9 out of 10 medical experts didn't think I'd make it. That's a joke. All 10 of 10 medical experts have been dead for months. Also, just as I was coming out of it, it was Christmas, and that was an interesting experience too. You know how there are monsters of lore that come out during the holidays, like Krampus or the Yule Cat? Yeah, we don't have those because God forbid we have a monster I've heard of before that I could actually look up information about. But it turns out there's a monster around here that likes Christmas. It made its first appearance last week right as I was conscious again and made my headache start all over. But more on that later. Today I'm talking about how close I seriously came to dying in the past few weeks. And why did I almost die when I have such a carefully curated list of rules? Because I'm a fucking idiot and decided to forget all about rule number 5. And why did I forget about rule number 5? Because I was too focused on finding that girl. I suppose I may as well go ahead and tell you what rule number 5 is, because it's not very exciting. Not all my rules are. Some don't deal with specific monsters. Instead, they're general guidelines for surviving in this hellscape. And though boring, they're helpful advice against several varieties of monster, not just one. They're the glue holding my more species-specific rules together, if you will. Rule number 5. If something seems too good to be true, it probably is. I made that rule pretty early on, to prevent myself from having false hope. Between Ashleys and MJs and other deception-based monsters, though they didn't all have names at the time, I figured a base rule for not trusting everything good I came across was in order. I believe I made an official rule after another close call with an Ashley, followed by an encounter with the creature behind rule number 3. I'll get to rule number 3 another time, by the way, so hold your horses. Today's star is rule number 5, whether you like it or not. Unfortunately, like the idiot I am, I forgot all about rule number 5 in my pursuit of the girl. Did she seem too good to be true? Yes. Yet, did I pour all my energy and heart into finding her? Also yes. So am I a dumbass who can't follow my own rules and almost died as a result? Jury's verdict? Yes. Let me explain. See, she left me that riddle. After several suggestions and a lot of struggling thought on my own, I came to the conclusion that the most likely answer was Echo. That wasn't super helpful though, because it left the question of where Echo was supposed to lead me. So then I spent days walking around the part of the city she left her clues in, desperately scouring for anything that might relate to Echo. I also combed the internet looking for answers. That took another day by itself, since my connection is so goddamn slow. Ultimately, my best bet turned out to be a concert hall about 3/4 of a mile away from where I'd seen her. Old Google reviews mentioned its acoustics and the lovely echoing quality of the music performed there. It was a stretch, but it was the closest link I could find. I went there about a week after my last post. That's about 2 weeks ago, for those following along at home. And yes, I was prepared. Or at least I thought I was. I ran through my rules in my head, making sure I had everything I needed both mentally and materially, though conveniently hurrying past rule number 5, apparently. Once I had my lasers, voice recorder, knife, pistol, lighter, 2 Molotov cocktails, and of course Mr. Bailey, we headed out. Everything was pretty quiet on the way to the concert hall, actually, and I made it there without incident. Maybe that should have seemed suspicious, but it's not like it's unheard of to get lucky and avoid monsters every once in a while, so I was really just grateful that I seemed to be having a stroke of luck, and hoped that it would hold. Spoiler alert, it didn't. Things only went downhill from there. I stood outside the concert hall for a minute, Mr. B chirping on my shoulder. After a few deep breaths and a glance down at her note one more time, shockingly, there was nothing new written there, I stuffed the paper in my pocket and walked forward. Steps led me up to the entrance, which consisted of a long row of glass doors. Instinctively, I pulled out my knife and gripped it tightly as I crept closer. It was still daylight, so you'd think I'd be able to see in through the glass, but the interior was completely dark, so all I really saw was glare from the sun. I didn't like having such little visibility for what I was about to walk into. I may not have a formal rule for it, but a good general tip is not to enter somewhere blind. And here I was, about to do exactly that. I hesitated, and man, I wish I'd turned back then. This was a high-risk, high-reward operation after all. I could be rewarded with meeting the girl and befriending her, but I was risking entering a place that might be a hotbed of monsters, or being led into a trap, or guessing wrong on her riddle and exposing myself to monsters in an unfamiliar part of town for no real reason. If I'd been thinking of rule number 5, it would have occurred to my idiot self that the reward part was probably too good to be true. But, as has been established, 1, I'm a dumbass, and 2, I was too hopeful, and with my high hopes, I got careless. So I went in, obviously. Mr. B dug his claws in as I pushed open one of the glass doors. stepping into a shadowy entrance hall where the only dim light came from slanted sunbeams behind me. The foyer was empty, thank God. My footsteps echoed around the hall, which I guess was a good sign, since I was looking for Echo after all. Mr. B chirped again as I continued forward past an abandoned concession stand to the next set of doors, these ones wooden. Remarkably, most of them were still standing and unharmed. I only saw 2 that had been shredded to splinters, and were hanging off their hinges. Maybe that meant monsters hadn't been here much. A guy can hope. Still holding my knife in front of me in my left hand, I reached out and pushed one of the intact doors open with my right. It swung easily, revealing a cavern of darkness. I cursed and pulled out my flashlight. I'd been hoping I could avoid drawing attention to myself with a light, but the hall was basically a black hole, and complete darkness was way more dangerous than showing my position but being able to see. If there were monsters here, they'd probably hear me regardless, to be honest. I switched on the light and saw a carpeted aisle gently sloping down ahead of me. Rows of seats lined it on either side. The seats may have once been plushy and well kept, but now they were coated in dust. Cautiously, I started down the aisle, feeling Mr. Bailey's tail flick nervously against my neck. I didn't blame him. I was nervous too. Once I was close to the front, I could see more of the stage. It was impressive, if you're into that sort of thing. Before all this, I would have said I'd be the last person to be caught dead in a concert hall. But here we were, and I wasn't dead, yet. And honestly, I could kind of see the appeal. The stage was dusty like the seats, but still managed to portray a sense of majesty. The curtains hanging off to the sides were a deep purple with gold trim. It must have been nice, back before all hell broke loose. I hadn't seen anything helpful yet, so I figured I'd get up on stage. At the very least, I'd be able to shine my flashlight into the different sections of seats and maybe up into the balcony. See anything there was to see, you know? The carpeted aisle had muffled my footsteps, but as soon as I pulled myself up onto the stage, it was time to look for stairs. That was all over. Every step was magnified tenfold, echoing around the entire hall. I'm sure you could hear my steps even in the dust up in the furthest seat in the balcony. Well, if this place was the correct answer for Echo, it was certainly well deserved. This is where it all goes to hell. Strap in, motherfuckers. I made my way front and center on the stage, and just as I began to shine my flashlight into the audience, I was blinded. A gigantic spotlight turned on, aimed directly at me. It was so sudden and so bright that I cursed and dropped the flashlight, using that hand to cover my eyes instead. Blindly, I stumbled back to escape its glare. It followed. My heart was racing a mile a minute, both because of the shock and because I realized that if the spotlight was following me, someone was controlling it. Thankfully, it only took a minute for my eyes to adjust. But if you've ever been in a spotlight, you probably know what I discovered then. With the light on you and with the audience dark, it's fucking impossible to make out anything in detail beyond the stage. This was alarming, since I now could see even less than I'd been able to with the meager flashlight, especially with my eyes adjusted to the damn spotlight and not to the darkness. I considered calling out, but I've seen enough horror movies to know that calling hello is, at best, useless, and at worst, fatal. So I stood there, silent except for Mr. B's swishing tail, waiting for something to happen. I didn't have to wait long. Suddenly, another spotlight turned on, only this one was aimed up to the balcony, and in the circle of light was none other than the girl I'd been pursuing. My heart skipped a beat for a different reason, and for the first time, I started to feel a little more confident that this was the right decision, and that it was safe. Big mistake. "You figured out my riddle," she called from the balcony. She was too far for me to make out many details, but by squinting I could see that she had brown hair pulled back in a ponytail and that she was wearing glasses. "I appreciate the challenge, but was it really necessary? I've got other things to think about besides difficult riddles. Like, surviving," I yelled back. "You thought it was difficult?" came her response. I could practically hear the smugness in her voice. Well, I wasn't giving in that easily. "No, I just wanted to make you feel good about yourself," I called. Mr. B growled on my shoulder, and out of the corner of my eye, I could swear I saw something move. But I, stupidly, ignored both these things. "Oh, right, obviously," she answered. There was a pause, and then she added, "I'm so glad you made it here." Before I could reply, all of the house lights simultaneously turned on. And well, it wasn't pretty. I shit you not, the audience was full of monsters. All those dusty seats that had been empty on my walk up here, well, they weren't empty anymore. Not even close. Where the hell had they all come from? Had they been hidden somewhere before? Had she hidden them somehow? Thankfully, even as my heart panicked, my body and brain more or less knew what to do. A quick scan revealed no Ashleys, there was no food here, so not surprising. And no MJs, also not surprising, since they're really one-on-one type fellas. Didn't really see Dylans either, which made sense, they don't generally come inside, and it wasn't night outside, so they were probably hibernating in their caves or something. To be safe, though, I reached in my pocket and turned on my voice recorder, allowing Blueberry to echo repeatedly through the hall. It looked mostly like Caleb's and Brent's. At least they're dumb, but I still need a hell of a lot of brute force to make it out of this. I'd never faced this many of either at once before, and they were all staring, right at me. Keeping my knife pointed towards the crowd, I yelled over my recording up to the girl. This was a trap, I called, and even I could hear the anger clear in my voice. What are you? Are you even human? Whatever you are, you're a bitch. I glanced only briefly up at her, maintaining my gaze on the monster horde so I wouldn't miss a move they made. So far, they hadn't moved, which made me fear that they were waiting on a signal. From her, maybe? She must have set me up. A long con to betray and kill me, if you will. Was she a new kind of monster I hadn't met before? Was she their leader? I am human, I swear, she called back, sounding almost like she was about to cry. I swear I didn't... And that's all she got out before all of the lights went out. Yes, all of them. Both the spotlights and the house lights. We were plunged in complete darkness, except for the single weak beam from my flashlight, which illuminated flashes of fur and skin and claws as the monsters simultaneously raced towards me. Fuck, 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 fuck! I screeched, tripping over my own feet as I hurried backwards. Fumbling in the dark, I reached into my pockets and managed to find my lighter and one of the cocktails. Unfortunately, I only have 2 hands, so I had to hold the knife between my legs as I rapidly tried to ignite the cocktail without seeing it. The lighter flicked on, and by the glow of the flame I could see both the rag, good, and the monsters who were almost at the stage, bad. Frantically, I managed to set the rag on fire, and as soon as it caught, I flung it into the horde. Then I ran. From behind me, I heard the explosion and the screeches of monsters, mostly Brent's probably, as it killed at least a few of them. Not that that was as helpful as I wanted it to be. I was holding the knife again now, the lighter in my other hand, but I didn't have enough of a lead to stop and ignite the other Molotov cocktail, or to try my hand at lasers. For now, I just had to run. The lighter provided just enough visibility to not trip and kill myself as I raced backstage, shrieks and growls getting closer and closer behind me. Mr. B was on my shoulder, facing backwards and hissing, and while I appreciated his efforts, I'm pretty sure they were doing very little to deter our pursuers. I guess there's some mercy left in the world because I came across a ladder. I was running out of backstage space as monsters swarmed closer from all sides. I couldn't see them, but I could hear them. So without a second thought, I climbed it as fast as I could. Thankfully, it led to, I believe it's called a catwalk. I looked it up afterwards. You know, like a suspended platform above the stage where all the lights hang from. I ended up standing on that. Apparently, Caleb's and Brent's weren't used to ladders because I had a blessed few seconds up there alone. I used them to ignite the second cocktail and throw it into the monster horde. Seconds later, I could see the explosion as it tore apart several Brents. Nice. At least if I went down, and it sure seemed likely I would, I'd go down swinging. I would have tried lasers, but I couldn't see the Caleb's eye holes, and besides, there were way too many of them. And as I figured out the ladder and eagerly began to climb up it, there was nowhere else to go. It was too high to jump safely, and even if I tried, I could hear the Caleb's and Brents down below, waiting for me if I chose that option. No way out. I cursed myself for being such an idiot and ignoring rule number 5, because suddenly rule number 5 was very clear in my head, and said to Mr. B, I love you, bud. Let's go out fighting, huh? He meowed in response. So I fought, armed with my knife, a pistol, and a cat. I fought. I held off the first few with only a few scratches and swipes, but then I ran out of bullets, and more of them had made it to the catwalk. I got bitten several times. Claws were raked down my back, across my face, across my chest. I honestly don't remember the details, but I know it was rough, based on the injuries afterwards. I could hear shrieks and explosions below at that point, and as if someone was fighting the monsters down on the stage too, but I didn't have time to look. And soon it was too late. The monsters had overwhelmed me. I was spitting blood and barely conscious, and I'd run out of catwalk. As I swung the knife one last feeble time, a Caleb lunged at me, and I slipped backwards in a pool of my own blood, falling down to the stage, where I remember my head hitting the wood with a heavy thud. And yes, it echoed. Before I was completely unconscious. Man, fuck that Caleb. I mean, fuck all Calebs, but fuck that one in particular. That one that made me fall off the catwalk might actually be worse than original Caleb. On second thought, nah, he's still the worst. Fuck Caleb the most. I really don't know exactly what happened for the week after that. I remember flashes of someone carrying me down the street, but not a person. Someone big, because I was far off the ground. Like Hagrid carrying Harry. Then I was home. In and out of consciousness for days, in a haze and in a lot of pain. Most of my body was wrapped in bandages by someone. I think I was fed too, because I remember soup. It's all a weird blur of reality and dreams and agony. I'm still getting headaches and dizzy spells. I assume it was a concussion. Pretty serious blood loss too, and a broken arm. Honestly, I'm probably lucky it wasn't worse, all things considered. But here's the kicker. I wouldn't be alive if the mystery person hadn't gotten me out of there and into my home, if they hadn't watched over me and cared for me and bandaged my wounds and even put my arm in a shitty makeshift sling. I would have definitely have died on that stage, either from bleeding out or becoming monster food. And I'm pretty sure the mystery person is, in fact, the girl I thought lured me into a fatal trap. Why? Because when I finally woke up for good, I found a note left on the table. Once my head stopped swimming, I read it. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for that to happen. It wasn't a trap. I realize it looks like that, and I don't know how to show you otherwise. But I did what I could, and you should be okay now, though I can't do anything about the scars. Best of luck to you and the cat. P.S. If you ever decide to give me another chance, no riddles this time. You can find me in the bookstore on Sycamore Street. P.P.S. My name is Zoe. So before you ask, no, I don't know what to believe. It sure seems like she led me into a trap to kill me, but then why did she make sure I didn't die? Is this all a multi-level trick, or did she get ambushed by the monsters as much as I did? I just don't know, and all the thinking in circles I've done about it has only made my head hurt worse. I have no idea yet if I'm going to go to that bookstore. It took me this long to even want to write about my first failed venture, and then things went to shit all over again at Christmas. At least I know her name, I guess. Though, was it worth it? Who the fuck knows? Anyway, I'm alive, and I sure as shit won't be ignoring rule number 5 anymore. It seemed too good to be true, and whether it was intentional on her part or not, it was. Too good to be true, that is. So I think I'm retired from chasing her, at least for now. At least until my fucking arm can move again and words don't swim on the page after writing for an hour. I do have long scars on my back and across my face that likely won't ever go away. But hey, I'm alive. And so is Mr. B. I know he's who you're really worried about. I don't think he fell with me. He probably snuck out between the monster's legs or something. But he was here purring on my lap when I woke up, and I wouldn't have it any other way. So, cheers to me surviving despite my idiocy. And cheers to Mr. Bailey. I changed my mind about concert halls, though. You know how I said I could see the appeal? Yeah, fuck that. I'm never going back in one of those godforsaken places again.